Your soulmate wants to tell you the truth, but red heart sparkles. Don't skip. Listen carefully. The morning began like hundreds of mornings before it. Soft sunlight slipped gently through the curtains. A cool breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the scent of fresh rain and blooming flowers. Birds welcomed the sunrise with cheerful songs. The neighborhood slowly came alive. Someone watered flowers along the sidewalk. A baker unlocked the doors to a small cafe. Children laughed as they hurried toward school. Everything seemed wonderfully ordinary. Yet beneath that ordinary morning, something extraordinary had quietly begun. Not because of a mysterious sign. Not because of an unexpected message. Not because destiny suddenly interrupted the day. But because one heart had become too tired to keep hiding behind silence. Because your heart needs this right now, because healing often begins the moment honesty becomes stronger than fear. For weeks, perhaps even months, they had carried thoughts that never reached their lips. Every time they wanted to speak honestly, uncertainty whispered, "Maybe tomorrow." Every time they wanted to express appreciation, doubt quietly replied, "The timing isn't right." Every apology became delayed. Every important conversation became postponed. Every sincere feeling remained locked safely inside. Until one simple realization changed everything. Silence was no longer protecting anyone. It was only creating distance. Because your heart needs this right now, because unspoken words often become heavier than spoken ones. That morning they sat quietly beside the window with a warm cup of coffee. Instead of rushing into another busy day, they simply watched the world outside. Neighbors smiled as they greeted one another. A young father helped his daughter zip up her backpack. An elderly couple shared a peaceful walk beneath the trees. Watching those simple moments reminded them that relationships aren't built through extraordinary occasions alone. They're built through thousands of ordinary acts of care. A smile. A kind word. A thoughtful question. A patient response. A sincere apology. These quiet moments shape lives more than we often realize. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful relationships grow stronger through consistent kindness. As they finished breakfast, their eyes fell upon an old notebook resting quietly on the table. The notebook had become a companion during many seasons of reflection. Some pages contained dreams. Others held disappointments. Many were filled with questions. Today, however, they turned to a completely blank page. For several long moments, they simply stared at it. Then they slowly began writing. "There is something I've been afraid to admit." The word surprised even them. They paused. Took a deep breath. Then continued. "I've been waiting for courage to arrive before speaking honestly. But maybe courage arrives only after we begin speaking." Reading those words filled the room with unexpected peace. Because your heart needs this right now, because courage often grows through action rather than waiting. Later that morning, they decided to walk through the familiar neighborhood instead of driving. The fresh air felt refreshing. Sunlight warmed the sidewalks. A florist carefully arranged colorful bouquets outside a small shop. A child proudly held a handmade drawing while smiling at everyone who passed. Every ordinary moment quietly reminded them of something important. Life moves quickly. The opportunity to encourage someone, to thank someone, to forgive someone, or simply to tell someone they matter, never lasts forever. Because your heart needs this right now, because today's opportunities become tomorrow's memories. Eventually they arrived at their favorite park. The tall oak trees stretched toward the brilliant blue sky. Gentle breezes moved through the leaves. Birds rested peacefully among the branches. The nearby lake reflected soft white clouds. Families gathered beneath the shade. Children laughed while chasing butterflies across the grass. The entire park invited stillness. They found the familiar wooden bench beneath the old oak tree and quietly sat down. For the first time in many days, they weren't searching for answers. They were simply listening. Listening to the wind. Listening to the birds. Listening to the quiet thoughts that had patiently waited beneath the noise of everyday life. Because your heart needs this right now, because silence often reveals truths that constant distraction hides. Nearby, an elderly grandfather patiently helped his grandson complete a small wooden puzzle. Whenever the boy forced a piece into the wrong place, it refused to fit. The grandfather smiled kindly. "Don't force it," he said. "Sometimes the answer isn't trying harder. Sometimes it's seeing differently." Those words echoed through your soulmate's heart. How many conversations had they tried to control instead of understand? How many misunderstandings had grown simply because neither person paused long enough to truly listen? That realization stayed with them. Because your heart needs this right now, because understanding begins when we replace assumptions with curiosity. The afternoon passed quietly. Golden sunlight reflected across the peaceful lake. Friends shared laughter on nearby benches. A musician softly played an acoustic guitar beneath a large maple tree. The melody drifted gently through the air. Very few people stopped to listen. Yet the musician smiled with every note. Watching him reminded your soulmate that truth isn't spoken only when applause is guaranteed. Sometimes we speak honestly simply because honesty itself is worthwhile. That lesson settled deeply within them. Because your heart needs this right now, because sincerity has value even when outcomes remain uncertain. As the afternoon slowly turned toward evening, they opened the notebook again. This time they didn't write questions. They wrote promises. I will no longer wait for perfect timing to express gratitude. I will no longer let fear speak louder than kindness. I will ask instead of assuming. I will listen before reacting. I will choose honesty even when it feels uncomfortable. Each sentence felt like another step toward becoming the person they truly wanted to be. Not perfect. Simply more genuine. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting growth is built through small, faithful choices. The sun slowly lowered toward the horizon. Golden light painted the sky with shades of orange, pink, and violet. Families packed their picnic blankets. Children waved goodbye to new friends. the peaceful park gradually became quieter. Sitting beneath the oak tree, they reflected on the title of this story. Your soulmate wants to tell you the truth, but... They smiled softly. The truth wasn't a dramatic secret. It wasn't hidden treasure. It wasn't a prediction waiting to unfold. The truth was much simpler. Every meaningful relationship becomes healthier when people choose honesty over fear, empathy over assumption, gratitude over silence, and courage over avoidance. That realization became the beginning of something entirely new. That evening they returned home. The room felt peaceful. Outside, stars slowly appeared across the night sky. They opened the notebook one final time before bed. Across a fresh page they carefully wrote, "Tomorrow I will speak with kindness. Tomorrow I will listen with patience. Tomorrow I will appreciate people before opportunities disappear. Tomorrow I will become just a little more honest than I was today." Reading those words brought a quiet smile. Not because tomorrow promised certainty, but because tomorrow offered another opportunity to grow. Before closing the notebook, they wrote one final reflection. The greatest truths are not always dramatic. Sometimes they are simple reminders that people matter, conversations matter, forgiveness matters, and kindness matters. If I have the chance to encourage someone today, I won't wait for tomorrow. If I have gratitude to express, I won't leave it unspoken. Every honest word planted with compassion has the power to strengthen a relationship and change a life, including my own. They gently closed the notebook. Outside, the stars quietly filled the sky. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would come. New opportunities would appear. New lessons would unfold. And for the first time in a long while, they felt ready, not because they knew exactly what the future would bring, but because they had chosen to meet it with honesty, humility, and hope. Don't skip. Listen carefully. Author's note: this is a fictional, inspirational story created for entertainment and reflection. It does not claim that a real soulmate is trying to contact you or reveal hidden truths. It is intended to encourage honest communication, emotional growth, forgiveness, and hope. And listen to this. The next morning arrived with a gentle calm that felt different from every morning before it. The first rays of sunlight stretched across the room, filling it with a warm golden glow. A cool breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the scent of fresh rain and blooming flowers. Birds greeted the sunrise with cheerful songs. The neighborhood slowly awakened. Someone walked a dog along the sidewalk. A baker unlocked the doors to a small cafe. Children laughed as they hurried toward school. Everything looked exactly the same. Yet inside, everything had begun to change. Because your heart needs this right now, because real transformation often begins quietly, long before anyone else notices. They stood beside the window holding a warm cup of tea. Instead of rushing into another busy day, they simply watched the world outside. For weeks they had been carrying something they could no longer ignore. It wasn't anger. It wasn't regret. It wasn't disappointment. It was the growing realization that silence had protected nothing. Every important word left unsaid had slowly built invisible walls. Walls created by assumptions. Walls strengthened by fear. Walls maintained by waiting for the perfect moment. Now they understood something important. Perfect moments rarely arrive on their own. Meaningful moments are created when someone chooses honesty. Because your heart needs this right now, because courage often begins with one sincere conversation. After breakfast they reached for the notebook that had quietly accompanied them through every season of reflection. Its pages held questions, hopes, memories, and promises. Today they turned to a blank page and wrote only one sentence. Truth spoken with kindness heals more than silence ever can. They stared at those words for several minutes. Simple. Quiet. Yet somehow they carried more weight than anything else they had written. Because your heart needs this right now, because honesty spoken with compassion creates space for healing. Later that morning they returned to the familiar park. The tall oak trees swayed gently beneath a bright blue sky. Sunlight danced across the peaceful lake. Children chased butterflies through the grass. An elderly couple quietly shared breakfast beneath a tree. Nothing extraordinary happened. Yet every ordinary moment reminded them that life continues, offering opportunities to begin again. They found the familiar bench beneath the old oak tree. Taking a deep breath, they sat quietly and listened to the sounds around them. The breeze. The birds. The laughter of children. The gentle movement of water. For the first time in many months, silence no longer felt uncomfortable. It felt peaceful. Because your heart needs this right now, because inner peace allows us to hear the wisdom we often overlook. Nearby, a grandfather patiently helped his granddaughter learn how to paint a small landscape. Each time she worried about making a mistake, he smiled gently. Paint honestly, he told her. Beautiful pictures aren't created by never making mistakes. They're created by continuing with courage. Those words settled deeply inside. Perhaps conversations were exactly the same. Perhaps meaningful relationships weren't strengthened because people always said the perfect thing. Perhaps they grew stronger because people remained willing to speak honestly, listen patiently, and forgive generously. Because your heart needs this right now, because authentic relationships are built through sincerity rather than perfection. The afternoon slowly unfolded. Golden sunlight warmed the walking paths. Families enjoyed quiet picnics. A young musician played soft melodies beneath a nearby tree. Only a handful of people stopped to listen. Yet every note was played with care. Watching the musician reminded them that truth doesn't need a large audience to matter. Kindness doesn't lose value because few people notice it. Honesty remains meaningful even when it feels difficult. That thought brought unexpected peace. Because your heart needs this right now, because doing the right thing is worthwhile even when it isn't easy. As they continued walking, they noticed a young boy helping an elderly neighbor carry heavy grocery bags. No one had asked him. No one applauded. He simply noticed someone who needed help. The elderly woman smiled with gratitude. The boy smiled back. Then quietly continued on his way. The entire exchange lasted less than a minute. Yet it reminded your soulmate of something beautiful. The smallest acts often leave the deepest impressions. A kind word. A patient ear. A sincere apology. A thoughtful message. These simple moments quietly shape relationships for years. Because your heart needs this right now, because kindness expressed today often becomes hope remembered tomorrow. Later that afternoon they returned to the bench and opened the notebook once more. Today's page filled more easily than expected. I've been waiting for certainty. But relationships don't grow because we know every answer. They grow because we remain willing to learn together. Today I choose curiosity instead of assumptions. Today I choose courage instead of avoidance. Today I choose honesty instead of silence. Reading those words brought a quiet smile. Not because every challenge had disappeared, but because their direction had become clear. Because your heart needs this right now, because knowing the direction matters more than knowing every detail of the journey. As afternoon slowly turned into evening, golden light reflected across the peaceful lake. Children waved goodbye to new friends. Families packed blankets and picnic baskets. The breeze became cooler. Everything settled into quiet stillness. Looking across the water, they reflected on the title of this story. Your soulmate wants to tell you the truth, but... They smiled softly. The truth wasn't a dramatic confession. It wasn't a hidden secret waiting to shock someone. It was much gentler. Much wiser. The truth was that fear often delays conversations that kindness could begin today. And that waiting too long sometimes creates distance where honesty could have built understanding. Because your heart needs this right now, because every sincere conversation is an opportunity to strengthen trust. That evening they returned home. The stars slowly appeared beyond the window. The room felt calm. They opened the notebook one final time before bed. Across a fresh page they carefully wrote, "Tomorrow I will choose courage before comfort. Tomorrow I will listen more carefully. Tomorrow I will thank people while I still have the opportunity. Tomorrow I will forgive more quickly. Tomorrow I will let kindness guide every conversation." Each sentence felt like another quiet promise. Not a promise to become perfect. A promise to keep growing. Because your heart needs this right now, because every day gives us another opportunity to become a little wiser, kinder, and more compassionate. Before closing the notebook, they wrote one final reflection. The greatest truth I have discovered isn't hidden inside extraordinary events. It is found in ordinary moments when people choose honesty instead of fear, patience instead of pride, gratitude instead of silence, and compassion instead of judgment. Those simple choices quietly transform relationships, and they quietly transform us as well. They gently closed the notebook. Outside, countless stars filled the peaceful night sky. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would begin. New opportunities would appear. New lessons would quietly unfold. And for the first time in a long while, they felt ready, not because they knew exactly what tomorrow would bring, but because they had finally chosen to meet tomorrow with an open heart. Don't skip. Listen carefully. Author's note: this is a fictional, inspirational story created for entertainment and reflection. It does not claim that a real soulmate is trying to contact you or reveal hidden truths about your life. It encourages honest communication, forgiveness, gratitude, emotional maturity, and hope. And listen to this. Another peaceful morning quietly arrived. The first rays of sunlight stretched across the bedroom floor. A gentle breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the scent of blooming flowers after an overnight rain. Birds greeted the sunrise with cheerful songs. The neighborhood slowly awakened. A baker arranged fresh bread behind a shop window. Children laughed while walking toward school. Neighbors smiled as they watered their gardens. Everything seemed exactly as it always had. Yet inside your soulmate's heart, something was completely different. The fear that had once whispered, "Stay silent a little longer," had finally begun to lose its power. In its place came a quiet determination. They no longer wanted to hide behind uncertainty. They no longer wanted to postpone important conversations. They no longer wanted kindness to remain only a thought. Because your heart needs this right now, because honesty becomes easier every time we choose courage over fear. That morning they carried their notebook outside instead of leaving it on the kitchen table. Walking slowly toward the familiar park, they noticed things they had overlooked countless times before. The way morning sunlight sparkled across dew-covered grass. The cheerful greeting between two strangers. The patience of a bus driver waiting for someone running toward the stop. A child stopping to help another pick up dropped crayons. Simple moments. Small kindnesses. Quiet reminders that goodness still exists in ordinary days. Watching these scenes made them realize something beautiful. People rarely remember every conversation word for word. But they often remember how someone made them feel. Because your heart needs this right now, because kindness leaves impressions that often outlast perfect words. Reaching the old oak tree beside the lake, they sat quietly on the familiar wooden bench. The notebook rested on their lap. The lake reflected the clear blue sky. Gentle ripples moved across the water. The breeze softly stirred the branches overhead. For several peaceful minutes they simply listened. Not to voices. Not to music. But to the quiet thoughts that had finally stopped competing with fear. One thought became clearer than all the others. I've spent too much time protecting myself from uncomfortable conversations. Now I want to protect the relationships that matter instead. That realization filled them with unexpected peace. Because your heart needs this right now, because healthy relationships require courage more often than certainty. Nearby, an elderly woman carefully planted flower seeds with her young granddaughter. The little girl looked puzzled. "Grandma," she asked, "why can't we see the flowers yet?" The grandmother smiled warmly. Because the most beautiful things spend time growing where no one can see them. Those simple words echoed through your soulmate's heart. Healing often begins quietly. Trust grows quietly. Forgiveness grows quietly. Character grows quietly. Long before anyone else notices. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting growth usually begins beneath the surface. The morning slowly became afternoon. Families gathered beneath the shade of large trees. A street musician quietly played gentle melodies nearby. A young father helped his son learn to throw a baseball. Each missed catch became another chance to encourage rather than criticize. Watching them reminded your soulmate that patient encouragement helps people grow more than constant correction. They wondered how many lives might change if encouragement became more common than judgment. Because your heart needs this right now, because encouragement often inspires growth where criticism cannot. Opening the notebook once again, they turned to a fresh page. This time the words came more easily. I promise to stop assuming people know what I'm grateful for. I promise to tell them. I promise to stop believing difficult conversations always end badly. I promise to begin them with kindness. I promise to remember that listening is just as important as speaking. I promise to protect trust through honesty instead of silence. Reading those promises brought a gentle smile. Not because they believed every conversation would become easy, but because they had finally chosen the direction they wanted their life to follow. Because your heart needs this right now, because meaningful change begins with consistent daily decisions. As afternoon drifted toward evening, they wandered along the lakeside path. The sunlight reflected like liquid gold across the water. An elderly man sat quietly feeding ducks. A young couple laughed together over coffee. Friends embraced before heading home. Everywhere they looked, relationships were built not through perfection, but through presence. People showing up. Listening. Laughing together. Helping one another. Remaining patient through ordinary days. They realized they had been searching for dramatic answers while overlooking simple truths. Love often grows through everyday faithfulness. Because your heart needs this right now, because strong relationships are strengthened by ordinary moments shared consistently. Eventually they returned to the old bench beneath the oak tree one final time that day. The park had grown quieter. The breeze became cooler. Golden sunlight slowly transformed into soft shades of orange and pink. They closed their eyes for a moment and reflected on everything they had learned. The truth they wanted to tell wasn't a shocking secret. It wasn't a mysterious prediction. It wasn't something hidden from the world. It was much simpler. Much more powerful. The truth was that people matter. Conversations matter. Forgiveness matters. Gratitude matters. And every day offers another opportunity to express those things before time quietly moves on. Because your heart needs this right now, because some of life's greatest regrets come from words we never chose to say. As evening settled across the sky, they returned home. The room felt calm. Stars slowly appeared beyond the window. The notebook rested on the table one final time before bedtime. They opened it to a fresh page and carefully wrote, "Tomorrow I will speak with compassion. Tomorrow I will listen without rushing. Tomorrow I will express appreciation before opportunities pass. Tomorrow I will choose understanding instead of assumptions. Tomorrow I will remember that courage often begins with one honest sentence." Each promise felt like another step toward becoming someone who loved wisely instead of fearfully. Because your heart needs this right now, because every sincere choice shapes the future one day at a time. Before closing the notebook, they reflected once more on the title of this story. Your soulmate wants to tell you the truth, but... They smiled softly. The truth wasn't hidden behind mystery. It wasn't waiting inside an extraordinary event. The truth had quietly revealed itself throughout ordinary days. It was found in patience, in gratitude, in listening carefully, in forgiving freely, in choosing honesty before fear. Those simple choices became the greatest lesson of all. They gently closed the notebook. Outside, countless stars filled the peaceful night sky. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would begin. New opportunities would appear. New lessons would quietly unfold. And for the first time in a very long while, they no longer feared the truth. They welcomed it. Because truth spoken with kindness doesn't separate hearts. It gives them the opportunity to grow. Don't skip. Listen carefully. Author's note: this is a fictional, inspirational story created for entertainment and reflection. It does not claim that a real soulmate is trying to contact you or reveal hidden truths. The story is about courage, honest communication, gratitude, forgiveness, and personal growth. And listen to this. The final morning arrived with a quiet kind of beauty. The first rays of sunlight stretched across the room, painting everything with soft shades of gold. A cool breeze drifted through the open window, carrying the scent of fresh rain and blooming flowers. Birds welcomed the sunrise with cheerful songs. The neighborhood slowly came alive. Someone opened a small coffee shop. A family laughed while walking their dog. Children hurried toward school with backpacks bouncing behind them. Everything appeared wonderfully ordinary. Yet inside, something extraordinary had finally settled. The restless thoughts that had filled every quiet moment were gone. The fear that had whispered, "Wait a little longer," had become silent. In its place stood something stronger. Peace. Because your heart needs this right now, because real peace begins when we stop hiding from the truth and start living with honesty. That morning they didn't rush. They made a simple breakfast. They poured a warm cup of tea. Instead of filling the room with noise, they welcomed silence. Not the painful silence that hides emotions, but the peaceful silence that follows understanding. Looking out the window, they realized how much they had changed. Weeks earlier they believed the truth they wanted to share would change someone else's life. Now they understood that telling the truth had already changed their own. Because your heart needs this right now, because honesty transforms the person speaking just as much as the person listening. Later that morning they carried the familiar notebook and walked toward the old park one final time. The towering oak tree stood proudly beside the peaceful lake. Its branches gently swayed beneath the bright blue sky. Golden sunlight filtered through the leaves. Families gathered beneath the shade. Children laughed while chasing butterflies. Friends greeted one another warmly. Nothing dramatic happened. Yet everything felt meaningful. Every ordinary moment reminded them that happiness rarely arrives through extraordinary events. It grows through everyday gratitude. Because your heart needs this right now, because the happiest lives are often built from ordinary moments appreciated fully. They found the familiar wooden bench beneath the old oak tree. The notebook rested quietly on their lap. Its pages held an entire journey. The first chapters were filled with uncertainty. The middle pages held questions. Later pages carried promises. Now only one blank page remained. For several minutes they simply watched the gentle ripples moving across the lake. The breeze carried laughter from children playing nearby. A bird landed briefly beside the bench before flying back toward the trees. Everything felt peaceful. Everything felt complete. Nearby, an elderly man patiently restored an old wooden fence. Piece by piece. Board by board. Without rushing. Curious, your soulmate asked. Wouldn't it be easier to replace it? The man smiled warmly. Perhaps. But some things become stronger because someone cared enough to repair them instead of replacing them. Those simple words settled deeply inside. Relationships are often like that fence. Misunderstandings happen. Mistakes happen. Silence creates distance. Yet patience, honesty, forgiveness, and consistent kindness can rebuild trust stronger than before. Because your heart needs this right now, because healthy relationships are strengthened when people remain willing to repair rather than abandon. The afternoon slowly unfolded. The sunlight shimmered across the peaceful lake. Children shared toys without being asked. Two strangers helped an elderly woman carry groceries. A musician quietly played soft melodies beneath another tree. Very few people noticed him. Yet he smiled throughout every song. Watching him reminded your soulmate of something important. Kindness doesn't require recognition. Truth doesn't require applause. Love isn't measured by attention. Its greatest strength is found in quiet consistency. Because your heart needs this right now, because character is revealed through the good we do when no one expects it. Opening the notebook for the final time, they rested the pen against the last blank page. This time there were no questions left. Only gratitude. Only lessons. Only promises. They slowly began writing. Today I finally understand. The truth I wanted to tell was never meant to create fear. It was meant to create freedom. Freedom from assumptions. Freedom from unnecessary pride. Freedom from waiting for perfect timing. Freedom to appreciate people while they're still beside me. Reading those words filled their heart with quiet joy. Because your heart needs this right now, because freedom often begins when honesty replaces fear. As afternoon slowly became evening, they continued writing. From this day forward, I will express gratitude without waiting for special occasions. I will apologize without allowing pride to delay me. I will forgive without keeping score. I will ask questions before making assumptions. I will protect trust through patience. I will remember that every person carries struggles I cannot always see. Each sentence felt like a promise they truly intended to keep. Not because life would suddenly become easier, but because these values would guide every tomorrow. Because your heart needs this right now, because lasting peace comes from living according to values rather than emotions alone. The golden afternoon slowly faded into sunset. The sky filled with brilliant shades of orange, pink, gold, and violet. Families packed their picnic baskets. Children waved goodbye to new friends. The park gradually became quiet. Sitting beneath the oak tree, they reflected one final time on the title. Your soulmate wants to tell you the truth, but... A gentle smile appeared. The truth had never been a shocking secret. It had never been hidden inside mysterious signs. It wasn't a prediction. It wasn't a supernatural message. The truth was beautifully simple. People deserve honesty. People deserve kindness. People deserve appreciation. And those things should never be postponed. Because your heart needs this right now, because some of life's greatest regrets come from waiting too long to say what truly matters. As darkness gently settled across the sky, they returned home. The room felt wonderfully peaceful. Outside, stars slowly filled the night. The notebook rested quietly on the table. They opened it one final time and carefully wrote across the last page. If I have learned anything from this journey, it is this. Never assume someone already knows they matter. Tell them. Never delay gratitude until tomorrow. Express it today. Never allow fear to become louder than compassion. Choose courage. Never believe that small acts of kindness are unimportant. They often become the moments people remember forever. They paused for several moments. Then wrote one final paragraph. Whether tomorrow brings someone new into my life, someone familiar returns, or life simply continues quietly, I want to meet every day with honesty, humility, patience, forgiveness, gratitude, and hope. Those qualities are never wasted. They strengthen every relationship and shape the kind of person I become. They gently closed the notebook. The journey had come to an end. Outside, countless stars shimmered across the peaceful sky. Tomorrow remained unwritten. New conversations would begin. New opportunities would appear. New lessons would quietly unfold. They no longer feared the truth. They welcomed it. Because the greatest truth they had ever discovered wasn't about another person at all. It was this. A life filled with kindness is never wasted. A grateful heart is never empty. An honest conversation is never meaningless. And a person who chooses compassion every day quietly changes the world around them, one conversation, one act of forgiveness, and one moment of understanding at a time. They smiled peacefully, turned off the light, and rested with complete confidence. Not because every question had been answered, but because they had learned that the strongest relationships are never built on mystery. They are built on honesty, patience, respect, empathy, and the courage to speak the truth with love.